Okay, today we're starting a new series. I will be going over each episode of The Righteous Gemstones from the very first one to where we are now. I'm going to be doing on Sundays the previous week's episode because I have to sit with these things and think about them for a while. I'm just like that. Um, this is a good time for me to be doing that since I'm kind of working on getting myself back in writing and being able to write again. If you're here for the very first time because you Googled the Righteous Gemstones on YouTube and I popped up, hey y'all. Um, Let me introduce myself. My name is Suzanne Tinkermeier. I am a writer. I live in Costa Rica. I used to write a column called No Longer Quivering, a daily column for Pathos. And I covered the world of quiverful, evangelical, quiverful, not just evangelicals, but fundamentalists, fundagelical. I covered anything that was bizarre like that was taking place at these churches. Why did I start doing that? Because I had lived that. I had lived that for a coon's age for a long time. I'd gone to a church with a bunch of other backslidden Catholics, and we didn't have a denomination. We made it up as we were going along, I should say, or maybe the pastor made it up as he was going along. So after that experience, a place I like to call Possum Creek because it's very close to the name of the actual church I went to that no longer exists, I found myself writing about and explaining a lot of the behavior, explaining the weirdness of the Duggars and others that I knew that the average person just did not understand. Not long ago, pre-COVID, but pre-COVID, by let's see, the autumn before COVID, my daughter, I was visiting her, and she was living in Fairfax, Virginia at the time. Said, "Have you seen this new show on HBO, The Righteous Gemstones? You have to watch this, Mom." Says it reminds me so much of our time at Possum Creek. So we're like, I was like, how could it possibly compare to our time at Possum Creek? Now, Possum Creek was loosely held together with a bunch of other churches, several in the Fredericksburg, Virginia area, one in Charlottesville, Virginia, all over the place. There were some that were at Harrisonburg, VA, that we were affiliated with. So we were loosely affiliated with these other little independent churches that had no sponsoring church. There was no independent Baptist, wasn't independent Baptist, weren't Baptist. We weren't really anything. But what we ended up being was such a strange place that it has echoes with this television show. So I've watched this thing religiously. I've written about it a couple of times. I've talked about doing this for a while, so I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to do some explaining. I'm going to do some demystifying and explaining today for those of you who are not watching the show. The show follows the family of a beloved televangelist and takes place in the Tidewater area of South Carolina. They film it in Charleston, South Carolina. I stumbled over that fact the Christmas before COVID when we were driving around because every year we used to take our Christmas in a town none of us had ever been to before since I moved to Costa Rica, my kids and I, and we all converge on that town. That year we picked Charleston. And driving up and seeing the Gemstone Church. Well, what they use is the church, the Locust Grove one, an old abandoned mall where there's not many stores left. I just about lost my, you know what. I screamed and yelled for my husband to stop the car and took pictures and was going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So there's so much about this show that for me really just rings true in the evangelical world, which is why I am doing this. So this televangelist who lives in the low country of South Carolina has three kids, and the show primarily focuses on the children more than it does Eli Gemstone, who's played by the multi-talented John Goodman. He is one of my favorite actors. So when I saw he was in, I was like, yeah, I'm good. I'm good. And his kids are played by Danny McBride plays the eldest, who's supposed to be the heir apparent to his empire, Jesse Gemstone. And Jesse's kind of an interesting character. Styles himself looking like Conway Twitty, right down to the huge sideburns. And he can be a very naughty guy, doing all kinds of crazy things, including, I don't know if it was meth or coke he was doing in one episode, but he loves his wife and he loves his kids. And that's really one of his biggest redeeming characteristics. But as a Christian, the middle child, Judy, is the one that I keep saying, Judy Gemstone is my spirit animal, except that I have a little tiny bit more politeness than Judy. I usually don't go ham on people like she does. Judy has no control. Judy just goes nuts. She's just one of those. She wants to be loved, admired, looked up to, get the attention that her brothers have, the attention and the respect of the father, and she does not get that. So what she's got is foul mouth and inappropriate behavior and language. And she is played by, oh shoot, she's played by a lovely lady named Edie. I can't think of her last name right now, and who plays it with the most insanity. Edie also was on Vice Principals along with Danny McBride. The youngest child is a confused, boyish youth pastor named Kelvin Gemstone. And Kelvin is played by an actor that I've seen in many other things, another one whose name escapes me at this second. Adam Devine. Adam Devine. He plays the youngest, who is something of an oddball. He doesn't seem to have any kind of sexuality. I don't know if he's asexual or if he is homosexual and just cannot admit it because of the pressure of his famous family. All three of the siblings really get into some crazy situations and do a lot of stuff behind the scenes. It's not very Christian. And there's a lot of foul language coming out of all three mouths, but more so the two eldest. So they get in all these scrapes, and you're just looking at what they're doing and going. And then you have a cast of other characters on the show. You have Keith, who I adore. Keith is one of my favorite characters. He is almost the manservant of the youngest son, Kelvin. Keith was a Satanist who was rescued by Kelvin, and now he just like worships Kelvin. And there's this weird energy between the two of them, and you wonder, are they both gay? Is this just two people who have vibing together that it's not sexual? You just wonder because it's so bizarre in some of the things that they do together. Kelvin can get Keith to go along with all of his bad ideas, from looking at a young girl's bedroom and rating it of everything satanic to having a muscle man group. No, that was really funny. That's season 2. To season 3, they're apparently trying to shut down porn shops by buying up all the things, all the BUTT plugs, all the DILDOS. I don't know, yeah, if YouTube will spank me for saying these things, so I'm going to spell them out because I certainly do not want the wrath of YouTube. So between the two of them, they get into some very bad ideas, and Kelvin is always there. Keith is always there for Kelvin. Calvin is sometimes there for Keith, but it's a weird relationship. And Tony Calaveri, is that how you say his name? Plays Keith, and it is hysterical. He's the same guy that played Ozzy Osbourne in the film The Dirty, snorting ants off the sidewalk. So it's pretty crazy. Judy, the middle daughter, the middle child, is married to a guy named BJ Barnes, who's like an optometrist in a, I think it was a Piggly Wiggly grocery store there. BJ is also a really awesome person. I really love his character. Him and Keith, I think, are the two closest to what you would call a Christian ideal. They're kind to everybody, they're humble, they try to help others. And he is just the yin to Judy's yang. So that creates a lot of dynamic tension and stuff. Now, Jesse, the oldest, is married to a woman named Amber, and Amber takes no prisoners. Amber's pretty awesome herself. She's a crack shot, as you will see as time goes on. She doesn't put up with bad behavior from her boys or her son. I mean, or her husband. And the three sons cause various troubles from the beginning, and that brings its own thing. Gideon, the eldest, I am on the fence about him. Sometimes I think he's the most evil guy on the planet, and then there's times I think, oh, he's a good guy, and he is a believer. The others, Judy and BJ don't have children yet on the show. There's the complication of Eli Gemstone's brother-in-law, baby Billy Freeman, who is the younger brother of his late wife, Amy Lee Gemstone. And as you will watch the show, you'll see that Eli and even his children haven't moved on from the death of Amy Lee, who was the brightest star and apparently was the center around everything turned. And they don't seem likely to move past the death of Amy Lee. Now, baby Billy Freeman still tries to use the popularity of his sister all the time for various schemes because he's kind of a scheming con man. But he's also one of the most charismatic and dynamic people on the show. And baby Billy Freeman, with his giant coif of silver hair, is married to a lady named Tiffany, who's, I don't know, she's like 19, 20, 21, somewhere that. She's young. She's young. She's younger than Judy, who she forces to call her Aunt Tiffany. There's a lot of crazy things that happen with baby Billy, too, so I don't want to spoiler too much of this for you. But baby Billy lives up to his con man days, and he's still touring, singing his song that he was a huge hit with his sister on the country charts. Um, and I have suddenly blanked on the song. I remember the lyrics. I could sing it. I could tell you. I'm running around the house with a pickle in my mouth. Misbehaving. That's it. Misbehaving. So misbehaving. They were misbehaving. And that part is pretty funny too. The whole song and the dance. And our family now, that's what I say, running around the house with a pickle in my mouth when somebody asks, "What are you doing?" And that's that. Right before COVID, that Christmas we were staying in Charleston, in North Charleston. My daughter and I, we must have sung that song 100 times. It must have played it a million times. And it's normally not either one of us our kind of song, but we've adored everything about this show. One of the things that caught my eye about the show was HBO did some little short vignettes with some of the actors for the show, and the man who plays Jesse, Danny McBride, is the creator of this show. Creator, writer, director, you name it. He's a triple threat, or more than a triple threat. Well, what you call more than, I don't know. But he started telling a story about going to a church in Fredericksburg, Virginia. Okay, very near where I was going to church. And I'm not 100% sure, but I think this church that he went to was a sister church to Possum Creek where I went. Why do I say that? Because he started telling a tale about his mother doing a puppet ministry. And I remember that. I remember when all that started. And that one of our Fredericksburg churches that we were linked with had this puppet ministry, and they were bringing these puppets all over the place. And they had trainings at our church about the puppets, and everybody was doing these silly puppets. They had these big bulbous heads and things. I was not interested in any of that. I was kind of like, no, whatever. That was not anything that I was involved with. I was in a worship team, um, prayer teams, all these different things. And they keep you super busy at these places. So I did see a little bit of the puppet ministry, and I saw the woman who came and taught it, which I think may have been his mother, because he talked in that little clip about that. So the first episode, my daughter and I are watching, and we turn to each other the first sequence, and it's like, because there was a true story, very similar to the two brothers fighting over who was baptizing the most people. In the season one, episode one, at the front of the episode, and it's like, wait a minute, this happened in, and we both knew who it was, where it happened. It was just crazy. And there were a couple other sequences that I was like, oh yeah, I remember that happened too, but it was a little bit different. So for me, that was kind of strange, just knowing that he went to a church that was likely linked to the church that I was going to, where we had the craziest crap happen. If you follow my recovery from religious kind of content, you'll know that I've talked about the time they tried to exorcise the stone boy, the time the pastor turned into the great Spider-Man pastor. The other thing that happened where they decided that Pokemon cards had evil spirits in them, and they made the kids burn them outside in a pile. Just so many crazy things happen. Some funny, some not so funny. I had a fellow worship team member who was mad at me because I told her one time that it was wrong for her to be gossiping about the leader. And after that, I could do no good in her eyes. She even went so far as to complain about my toilet paper. Said that I used luxury toilet paper, and that Jesus was unhappy with me blowing money on luxury toilet paper. When is Charmin considered to be a luxury? So I sure enough have some crazy ass stories of my own that came out of my time at Possum Creek, which was likely linked to the church he went to as a kid. So for me, this is personal. I love this show because of that. And because I watch it sometimes and see a few things that, yeah. So I was never part of a mega church, but our church went from maybe 50, 60 members when we first joined to close to, well, over 300. We were talking about having to put up a bigger church at that point. We got very involved in the Toronto Airport Christian Fellowship. We got involved in all the gifts of the Spirit stuff. We got really involved in all of that nonsense. It was nonsense looking back upon it. I don't feel that it helped anyone really get close to the Lord. I know a lot of people that like to pretend it did. I still think it's a lot of it was just a lot of emotional acting out because you were in such an emotional situation. So there's some of that with this show. Here's the thing I absolutely love about the Righteous Gemstones. They do not make fun of the day to day Christians, they just don't. The focus of the show is on this core group that is running this huge megachurch and their own behavior, not the people sitting in the seats, not the people doing all the stuff and making things happen, not people believing in Jesus and God, but on the shenanigans of the leadership, where There's a lot of shenanigans. Once I joined the worship team in my old church, it was like watching sausage being made. You had not ever had a hint of what was going on behind the scenes, but then you knew. Then you knew, and you could no longer, well, you could keep quiet like I did. It was like, ugh. But it was never the same for me after that. Never the same. Even though I was definitely, my eyes were open in some ways. In some ways, I was still drinking that Kool Aid. So, without further ado, I have rambled on enough. I'm trying not to spoiler this for anybody because I'm going to go through each and every episode. I want to talk about the theology and the lessons to be learned from this crazy ride of a show on HBO. It's on HBO Max, or regular old HBO. I would give you a time, but you know I'm in Costa Rica, and I know it's on Sunday nights. I watch it on my HBO Max later on Sunday nights than it actually comes out because I usually see a couple of threads about it on Reddit to let me know it's uploaded. So every Sunday before the show, I'm aiming for 5 o'clock. You will see a video where I'm going to talk about the theology of the theology and what happened in the righteous gemstones. Something I've been thinking about doing for a long time. And the other day I had somebody tell me, there's nothing theological happening at all, ever on this show. There is nothing out of Evangelical town. Why are people saying there is? And I had to say, one thing, I named one thing from season 2. From one of the episodes, it was kind of a goofy thing, and said, look, that came straight out of purity culture. That is what they were teaching the kids. They only touched on it briefly and on one tiny little bit of purity culture, but there it was. So that stuff is all over this show. Oh, so I'm excited. I love you guys. I invite you to come join me every Sunday at 5. And I'm going to catch up on the other episodes since I'm just sitting around like this and go back over for the theological parts and then talk about it. And those are going to be sprinkled in during the week until I'm caught up here. And but at the same time, I'm going to be doing the current season every Sunday. Okay, I'll see you guys for sure next week, but maybe before that.